Hello and welcome to the Monday Postcast. Slightly different circumstances today, but I've got James Hill on my left and Nick Watts on my right on the sofa. A thorn between two roses, I suspect. I've not been very well, as you can tell by my voice, so go easy on me, lads. But we're going to look back at Aidan O'Brien's breaking of Bobby Frankel's record of 25 Group 1s in the calendar year when winning the Racing Post Trophy to start off with. Saxon Warrior was the winner. On Friday's show, Frank said he'd love to see him in the 2,000 guineas, but we're going to have a look at him in the anti-post markets. First off, in the guineas, he's 8-1 for that. He's 5-1 favourite for the Derby. Lots of water under the bridge to go before we get to those. But what did we make of Saxon Warrior? I'm going to go to you first, Jimmy.
Yes, impressed. He did everything that was asked of him, really. He travelled well, showed a good turn of foot, I thought. Stayed well. I mean, you'd expect that from a horse by deep impact. His style stayed very well. And he showed good tenacity. He battled right the way to the line. I mean, the thing what was impressive, it was a good Group 1. We've been saying that the 2-year-old to season the colts, anyway, haven't been that impressive. But I thought that was one of the first races which really looked deep in terms of strength and depth. It was a good performance from him. As for next year, I'm not sure how much of a horse to follow he'll be. I mean, he's probably close to the finish article already. I know he's started quite late, but his dam maybe didn't really train on as a 3-year-old, and he might be one of those horses that's caught in between two stools, between not being quite quick enough for a Guineas, but maybe not being a typical horse for Epsom. So.
Okay, that's interesting. I was quite worried at one point. I didn't think the record was going to be broken because I thought Roaring Lion came there with a winning run. Did you think he was always going to get there? One of these Galileo was always going to stay on and win, or was the doubt there with you as well because the conditions?
I thought Roaring Lion had him. I was hugely impressed with Roaring Lion. He's certainly a horse I'm thinking of for the Guineas. But no, Saxon Warrior just looked the more professional, and at the end of the day, that counted. There was a strong headwind, wasn't there, or strong side wind? I think that made a big difference to the result. He might not have been the quickest horse in the race, but he got the job done.
Okay. So Andy Wilkie asks, from an anti-post perspective, we've sort of already covered this, which horse would you take out of the race and for which race in the future, Watsy? I've mentioned it, what prices he is, but just to reiterate, US Navy Flag's current 7-1 favourite for the Guineas with Gustav Klimt 8-1, and for the Derby, the Pentagon is 10-1, who also ran in the race on Saturday, and Amadeo Modigliani is at 12s. What race would you be looking at, or if any, for Saxon Warrior?
I'm sure he will start in the Guineas. Aidan's had a few Derby winners that have come through there. Camelot, of course, won the Guineas en route. Australia ran well in the Guineas, I think finished third and then went to Epsom. So I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't go kind of the Ballysax Derrinstown route. He's got plenty of others for that. And if he did take in, he did dip his toe in the waters in the 2,000 Guineas to start off with and go from there. I mean, if you're asking one that I liked for next year, I thought the vibes for the Pentagon before the race were dreadful. I mean, he virtually doubled in price, and I wasn't expecting very much at all. It must have been because he's had some kind of semi-serious hold-up since we last saw him, for him to drift like that. And so for him to finish third and staying on third, I thought was very encouraging. He's a definite stayer for next year. He's plenty of stamina in his breeding. So I thought that was a very encouraging run. I thought the top three were excellent. I thought Roaring Lion, as James said, he showed a stunning turn of foot to get there and almost got there too soon, which gave Saxon Warrior the time to be able to regroup and come back and beat him. But I'm sure if he'd held on to him a bit longer, the positions may have been reversed. So I certainly wouldn't rule him out of a bid for 2,000 Guineas glory next year. I think that's the only classic that John Gosden has yet to win, but he might have the right sort on his hands there.
Okay, brilliant. Lots of talk of Aidan O'Brien, juveniles and how strong they are. That comes into context. Someone's asked, Tim Skangdang has asked, will Aidan O'Brien break his own record next year? Which I thought was a really interesting question. I mean, it's difficult to say at this stage with the amount of sort of firepower. We don't know who necessarily is going to stay in training. Jimmy, I'll go with you. Do you think he could do it?
I think it'd be difficult. Very difficult. I mean, what he's done this year is amazing. But you wouldn't put it past him. I mean, he's got the first two in the Guineas, 2,000 Guineas market. I think he's probably got the 1,000 Guineas in the bag. I mean, he just seems to dominate the 3-year-old fillies division these days. And he's dominating the Derby market as well. So he'll have a good group of older horses right across the board. So you wouldn't put it past him. It's just a big number, 26 Group 1s in a year. I mean, that's amazing. So, yeah, I'd probably say you wouldn't, but...
Yeah. It just highlights what an incredible job he's done this year, hasn't it? Missing so many of his stars as well, minding, found. And more, what's a word on that from you? Do you reckon he can do it?
Yeah, I think he could. I'd be a little bit more optimistic about it than James would. He's got. It's just such a well-oiled machine, isn't it, Ballydor? He's got the best offspring. He's got Galileo. He's firing out youngsters left, right, and centre who all can be very good. That's not going to stop anytime soon. That'll be carrying on next year. Just every part of the team, as Zane O'Brien rightly says, he's got it absolutely spot on, and that's where you see the results. And there is more Group 1s, Grade 1s around now than there used to be, so it does give him the chance to be able to do it. He hasn't just got the domestic classics, he's obviously got the British ones, the French ones. He goes further afield than that, he wins the Grade 1s in America. So I certainly wouldn't put it past him, because something's got to make him tick, and he's broken the record once. To break his own record, that would be like the next thing for him to do, wouldn't it? And I think you can get prices on it somewhere. I wouldn't be against. I'd have to see what the odds are, but I could see him doing it, because this man is just extraordinary.
Yeah, I did have a quick look before we went live, actually, to see if I could find any prices on him breaking it, and I couldn't, but I'm sure they are out there. So watch this space on prices for Aidan O'Brien to break his own record next year. It's competition time now. Here's your chance to win a free £25 or €25 bet from Paddy Power. Simply tweet the answer to this question using the hashtag Postcast. Who is Antipost favourite for the 2018 Investec Derby with Paddy Power? We'll announce the winner on Friday's show. Welcome back to the Monday Postcast. I'm joined by Jimmy Hill and Nick Watts either side of me. We're sticking with the flat for a while before we get our teeth sunk in to the jumps well and truly. It's the Breeders' Cup this weekend, which is to be held at Delmar for the first time. And we're going to preview some of the big races, starting off with the turf. Paddy Power actually non-runner no bet on this race, and this is how they go. Highland Reel is 9-4, Ulysses 5-2, Beach Patrol is 6-1. Then we have Decorated Night 10-1 and Seventh Heaven at 12s. What are our thoughts on this, guys? I mean, Highland Reel's not been the luckiest with getting his conditions of late, but he's sure to get them here, and he'll be hard to beat, won't he?
Well, yes, but I mean, he'll be up against Ulysses, who's was beaten by him in this race last year, and was beaten him in the Royal Ascot as well. But I would say since then, Ulysses has gone up another level. Won the Eclipse, won the Jumbo impressively, second to Enable in the Arc. Highland Reel, I mean, he's very consistent, but he's never really gone above a certain level. For all that he's a fantastic globetrotter, for all his records very impressive, he's not going up the certain levels that Ulysses is. We know what a great trainer Sir Michael Stat is improving horses as they get older. So the last prices I saw, Highland Reel was marginally the favourite over Ulysses, but I think Ulysses at 5-2 is not to be sniffed at.
No. Proper value, will you be taking the 5-2, definitely getting stuck in?
Not to be sniffed at. If I can find a bit bigger, I'll take that as well.
Okay, so Ulysses for Jimmy Hill. Nick, what about you?
I'd agree with them on Ulysses if you're looking at it, between those two. I think the only thing that could compromise Ulysses, he's on the back of quite a long season. I mean, he's danced every dance, hasn't he, this year? I think they did exactly the right thing in missing out on Ascot. I think if he'd gone there and then tried to go here, it would have been a bridge too far for him. As it is, I think he might just be okay. If there is one that's overpriced, and I'll be interested to see if she goes, because obviously she's a stablemate of Highland Reel. It's Seventh Heaven, who, if you just looked at her last two starts, not very good. She's ran poorly, but didn't have her conditions. And I'm just interested they've even given her entry here. Must be some signs that she's back to the kind of form she was in the spring, and particularly last year when in New Yorkshire actually beat Found 2.5 lengths, who then obviously went on to win the Arc. So she is a top-notch filly when she's at her best. She's got an entry in the race. If she takes her chance, she will get conditions to suit, because she loves quick ground. And I think you mentioned in the prices a minute ago, she's about 10 or 11-1. 12s. If she was at her peak, that would be a massive price. And she would come into the equation at her best. It's just that question mark, but that's built into her price.
Yeah, totally. I mean, she's always been the sort of horse that's had that class edge. She just needs to put it all together. So, like you say, it's factored into the price, but maybe worth taking a chance on Seventh Heaven. We'll move on to the mile now. Again, these Paddy Power prices are non-run and no bet. We've got World Approval at 5-2. He won the Woodbine Mile. Ribchester at 100-30. Roly Poly 11-2. Churchill 6-1. Lancaster Bomber 8-1. And Soudois, who won the Shadwell Turf Mile, at 10-1. Again, Jimmy, I'm going to go over to you first. You just have a quick look now. What do you reckon?
Well, it wouldn't surprise me if the Europeans get beat here and it's a home win. Soudoir's got form in North America, so I can see him running a big race. But I mean, generally, I haven't really been that impressed by the horses here running over a mile. I think it's been far from a vintage year. I mean, Lancaster Bomber, who sometimes has been a pacemaker for Churchill, you could say, this season. I mean, the fact that he's as short as he is doesn't suggest it's the greatest team that we're sending over there. So I would say a home win in that race. And in terms of horses we know, Soudois would be the most interesting.
Okay, so Soudois at around 10-1 mark could be value for Jimmy. What about you, Nick? Do you think Ribchester could take this, or do you think, again, it's been a long season for him and he's worth taking on?
I love Ribchester. I'm sorry he's not being kept in training again next year because I really like watching him. And I wouldn't say he's been a maligned horse because I think people recognise he's very good, but I don't think he's quite appreciated as much as he should be. And I think the 2 times he's got beaten of late, once was at Goodwood in really bizarre conditions.
I'll tell you what, I was there that day, and if you would have told me to run a mile in that ground, I would have ran away from you.
There you go. And last time at Ascot again, I thought he travelled and looked the best horse in the race by quite some margin, but it was completely the ground. He got to the front going very nicely, but he got there maybe a little bit too far out, and he just struggles on that ground a little bit, and you could see it that he's kind of paddling close home, and Persuasive has come with a wet sail and done him. But I think on good ground you would have seen a completely different result. You would have seen him win comfortably. You would have seen him win the Sussex Stakes comfortably in a proper year when you get normal Goodwood-like conditions. And then we'd be talking about him in a different vein. So I would love to see him sign off with a win. I don't pretend to know everything about the American form because I don't study American racing. But for me, Ribchester would be the best of ours. I'm hoping that's good enough because we're only going to get him to see him once more now. And yes, I'm hoping he can get the job done.
Okay, so a successful swan song for Ribchester for Watsy. Just to reiterate, he's 100-30 with Paddy Power at the minute. We're just going to touch on the other Breeders' Cup races, any that we're particularly looking forward to. Obviously, we have Lady Aurelia and Marsha, the rematch, after they're 1 each now at Ascot and then at York. And also Arrogate v Gunrunner, which I think could be really interesting if Arrogate's back on song. Jimmy, what are you most looking forward to at the Breeders' Cup?
Well, I'm looking forward to the Fillies and Mares Turf, where you've got Rhododendron taking on one of America's biggest, Lady Eli. And that's a great contest because Rhododendron, I think, has got a great profile to win at the Breeders' Cup. I mean, she's got tremendous form from this season. She was second to Winter in the Guineas, second to Enable in the Oaks. And, of course, she beat Hydrangea in the L'Opera in France last time. That form's been franked since by Hydrangea. So I'll be very interested to see who goes off favourite there. At the moment, I think it's 3-1 each of 2.
Haven't got any prices on that at the moment, but yeah.
From what I remember, but I mean, certainly around the 3-1 mark, I'll be interested in backing Rhododendron. Okay,
Rhododendron for Jimmy. Nick?
Not really any betting propositions, to be honest, but I'll be interested to see how Churchill goes in the Classic. Might not be Aidan's most obvious move to put him in there, and he's had some better horses in the past that haven't got the job done. But one of these years, again, he's such a remarkable fellow. You wouldn't be surprised if he slung one in there and it came up trumps. So I'll be interested. I'm not putting him up. I'm just saying I'm interested to see how he gets on. I thought he ran quite well last time out. Maybe he's not quite in the same form as the spring. I don't know. It's hard to say. But yeah, I'm also looking forward to getting over it so we can talk about some jumping.
I think I'm with you on that one. But I do think Aidan O'Brien, he deserves an awful lot of credit, doesn't he? Because he's not afraid to do anything with these horses. He's a very enterprising man, obviously, as he's recorded the record. And it's great to see horses like Churchill in these races, just to see how they get on, isn't it?
And it's good that he broke the record on Saturday because the French went on strike yesterday. So he missed an obvious opportunity to break that record, and then he would have been sweating on what happened in America. So good job he did it on Saturday.
Yeah, I actually asked Nick Godfrey earlier if those races are due to be rerun. I don't think they are, so it's a good job he did do it on Saturday. Okay, so not resaged in that meeting. Okay, now Watsy's going to be very happy because after the break we're going to get tucked into the jumps action at the weekend. Okay, welcome back to the Monday Postcast. All the flat talk is over. You'll be happy to hear we're going to address the jumps now. Great action from Cheltenham and Aintree over the weekend. Starters, what did everyone make of the Old Rowan Chase? Now, I absolutely adored this because I had actually backed Smad Place. Hate to after time. But I just thought it was a wonderful, wonderful race. Great to watch. So first impressions after the Old Rowan, Jimmy?
I thought it was fantastic. Fantastic. That's why we love jump racing, isn't it? Getting these old warriors coming back and winning when you think, they're probably past their best. And it was a terrific training performance by Alan King. I thought it was a great ride by Wayne Hutchinson. I mean, King's record speaks for itself, but I do think he's generally got much better at improving these older horses in the recent years. I mean, Smad Place, really, maybe in years past, you might have thought you wouldn't have expected much more of a King runner at the age of 10 going on 11. But, I mean, he looked as good as ever there. I mean, he hasn't really lost much pace. I mean, winning a grade 2 over 2.5 miles. His jumping's still fantastic. And I thought Wayne Hutchinson gave him a great ride. I thought he outjocked Brian Cooper at the finish. And I thought he was, really at his dynamic best. And those two, King and Hutchinson, I think they're as good a partnership in jump racing in Britain as you'll find, really. They're so solid.
Yeah, I mean, Smad Place, I think he was something like £8 lower than when he was third in it last year. So it was a great performance. A lot of talk coming on to Cloudy Dream and the ride given in second. A lot of people think Brian Hughes didn't help the horse. I know he can be a bit quirky. What was your opinion on the race and Cloudy Dream, Nick? I know a lot of people are tipping him for the Bet Victor Gold Cup now, aren't they, at Cheltenham?
Yeah, I'm not sure that's completely his race. So, looking through his kind of back catalogue, he's done a lot of his running in small fields, which I think suits him. I'm not sure he's the heartiest of battlers in the finish. And put it this way, when they were coming to the last yesterday, and you had to nominate which one would fly the fence and which one would just get in close and make a small little mistake, you would have put your house on Smad, winging it. And Cloudy Dream, getting in tight, which is exactly what happened. And yeah, he ran on well close home, but never was going to get to Smad. And I don't know, yeah, there has been a bit of, criticism of Hughes flying around, but I think that's slightly unfair because I don't think he's the easiest horse to win on. I think you need to produce him at the right time. I don't think he'll sustain a run for particularly long, so he wouldn't want to be in front for a long time. And I think you just have to ride him like that, and you have to take your chances, and that's just the way the horse is. You look back through his history, there's a lot of twos there as well as a lot of ones, and the ones are come in small fields. So I don't think personally that a race like the Bet Victor, if it had a big field, would particularly suit him. I'm not sure he'd enjoy the hustle and bustle of it. So he wouldn't be top of my list for that. He's got all the talent in the world, but I think it's just going to be a job to coax it out of him. I'm not quite sure where they're going to go with him at the moment. And when he's up against a horse like Smad, and it gets tight in a finish, you're going to want to be with Smad, not Cloudy Dream.
Yeah, I said that yesterday. I said, isn't it a wonderful feeling when you've got a horse like Smad Place who, yes, you might have one absolutely tanking in behind, but he's such a public favourite, and you can bet your bottom dollar when Wayne Hutchinson throws him at that last with everything he's got, he's going to respond. I think it's...
Just going to say fitness is an important issue as well at this time of year. And Cloudy Dream, he's a very talented young horse. I mean, he's going to have bigger goals later in the season. So that you can expect some improvement from that, I would have thought.
Yeah, totally. Quick mention of a few other things that went on at Aintree. Vintage Clouds absolutely bolted up in his race, although the low sun and everything like that interfered. And then also on the blind side, won nicely as well. I believe he's 33-1 to win any sort of festival race at this stage. Anything else at Aintree catch your eye, Nick?
Yeah, the second in that race that you just mentioned, another stowaway trained by Tom George, that was 80-1 to win that race, and I thought it was coming through with a winning run. It jumped the last really well and is finishing really strongly. On the blind side, just too good for it in the end, but I think the first two from that race are worth putting in a tracker. And of course, there's a bit of controversy late on. I thought a very harsh demotion of Fergal O'Brien's bumper horse in the closing race. Looked like a good finish to me. Both jockeys never stopped riding. It's nip and tuck all the way. The O'Brien horse got it on the nod, but then got demoted in stewardship. Thought it was very harsh for anyone who had backed. Is it Gregola Girl?
Well, me and Jimmy had a discussion on how to pronounce this, and we went with Grayley Girl. But Postcast awarded the race. I was going to bring this up, so nice one. You did it for me, so I didn't have to remember. Jimmy, you're disagreeing with Nick a little bit on this one, aren't you?
On the photo finish, I thought it was such a tight finish. The problem is when it's that tight, if interference has been caused, and I think interference was caused to Postcast, it's difficult to say that therefore she wouldn't have won that race if she hadn't been bumped into. I mean, I just mentioned to you before we came in here, that isn't always the case. Sometimes, and I think there was an example a couple of weeks ago at Leicester, where a Silvestre de Souza horse that finished first past the post actually got demoted, even though to my eyes he actually came off worse, despite bumping the other horse. It's not always a case when interference is caused that the horse that causes interference actually improves its position out of it. But I thought on this particular occasion, you couldn't really say that Postcast came out better than Greeley Girl. I think really the right result was given in the end. It was very close, and when it's that close, I think you have to give the benefit of the doubt to the horse that was interfered with.
Okay, just a quick one then. Anything else at Aintree for you? Any eye catchers there?
Not really. I was amazed how well Vintage Clouds won, and on the blind side is definitely a horse to follow for the future. I thought it stuck its neck out really well, showed a good attitude. That's a Henderson horse that's going to win a few more races.
Yep, totally agree with those comments. Before we have a quick look at the Charlie Hall now, highlight of Cheltenham each for you. I'm going to kick us off cheekily and go with Slate House. I mean, he has a massive reputation. Colin Tizard's long said that he's sort of the next Finian's Oscar, bought for an awful lot of money, and I think he needs to brush up on his jumping, but the raw ability was there for all to see, and I think he's a huge, huge talent. So Slate House, an obvious one, but I think he's very, very classy. Nick, one horse or a highlight from Cheltenham?
I thought both the handicaps on Saturday were good races. I thought Coggery really is showing signs of getting his jumping together now. I know he made a bit of a blunder at the last, but he was good up until then. And he was so clumsy last season. I think he was the horse that put Ryan Hatch in hospital at Cheltenham early last season. And his form figures in the first part of last year were awful. It was F, B, U, F. But second in the Scottish National in the spring. Came back with a win here. He's still not badly handicapped, I don't think, when he does get it all together. And the signs are that he's gradually starting to mature and he's very much a stayer to look out for in the future. And I thought the handicap with Foxtail Hill just beating the Presien was obviously another fantastic race. I could see the Presien winning a decent race this season, possibly up to 2 miles 4. I don't know if the Bet Victor's the plan for him, but he's got a lot of ability. He's second behind York Hill at Aintree over hurdles a few seasons back. Now he's another one that's got his jumping together. I think he could win a decent race. Possibly the Bet Victor. They might have other plans for him or another horse for it, but
I think he might be going that way.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought he was brilliant to see Foxtail Hill. He was almost like Village Vic Mark II, wasn't he? Get to the front round Cheltenham and, really put them all under pressure and nothing can get near you. Jimmy?
I was heartbroken Foxtail Hill won. I didn't have a penny on him. I thought his performance last year when he won at the January meeting at Cheltenham was one of the best of the season. But I just thought, that was 2.5 miles on softish ground. This was 2 miles on good ground. And I just didn't think he'd be able to get away from them. But he did. He jumped superbly. He was given a fantastic ride. And he was able to beat a really good horse, outpace a really good horse up the hill in Le Président. And usually I would say these races run at Cheltenham in October, they tend to be talked up a bit too much because, a lot of bigger horses are coming out later in the season and the form doesn't really count much when the big spring festivals come about. But that race looks really good to me. I mean, they dashed a long way clear of the third horse, Sizing Platinum, who was second to Fox.
I love him. I think he's a very good horse in his own right.
And he was well clear of Poker School, who'd been well back before the race. I didn't think some of the younger horses in behind, like Cobra de Mai, Do It for the Village, I didn't think they actually ran that badly, even though the form book would suggest they were beaten a long way. So that is a race I think that you should keep in mind when it comes to March for Grand Annuals and so on. I think that's really good form.
Okay, very interesting. On that note, Darren Hughes asks, what are your trainers to follow early in the National Hunt season? This season, obviously, Nichols is off to a flying start. Nigel Twiston-Davies is always doing well, obviously, as he did at the weekend. And Harry Fry is flying too. Any particular trainer you look for at this stage in the season, Nick?
Well, Twisters would be the one, wouldn't he? I mean, he had a hat-trick at Cheltenham on Saturday. He always tends to get them going early. So he would be chief among them. Charlie Longsdon as well. For whatever reason, I don't know, but he seems to get his string out fit and firing early on as well. And it might just be a carryover from the summer because a lot of these guys, the Dan Skeltons, the Longstons, they have horses running over the summer. So obviously they're, rather than winding down, they're still keeping going. And so they might still have an advantage at this time of the year compared to like the depths of winter when some of the more the yards that are slower to come down start to come to the fore. So it's nothing groundbreaking, It's just the ones that always tend to do it. They trainers are creatures of habit, and ones that like to get the horses out early and pinch these good prizes. They do it time after time, and that's what's happening again this year. It's the same old people, really.
Okay, anything to add, Jimmy?
Yeah, well, Colin Tizard looks like he's coming back into form as well, just as he was doing last season. He really started to hit form around this time 12 months ago. David Pipe hasn't hit form yet, but he's one to remember for the November meeting. That going back through the years, a Pipe yard always fired around November time. And they're a bit quiet at the moment, but give it another month, I would expect to see their name on the winners board at Cheltenham.
Yeah, it's interesting. You talk of trainers and time of year. Obviously, when the mud gets flying, Venetia Williams' horses seem to be back, left, right and centre and all sorts. So very interesting one, that. Right, we're going to move on to the Charlie Hall now. Thomas Jones asked thoughts on the Charlie Hall as he's off to Wetherby on Saturday. So I'm very jealous of him going to Wetherby. Haven't currently got any prices on this because I think it's just that difficult time of day when they're not available. But I do know that Black Line, Bristol de May, Koenigsegg, Q-Card, Definitely Red, More of That, Verlion Rouge, Village Vic and Sizing Cadelka are some of the main entries. Shed some light on the Charlie Hall. I know Q-Card, he's had a racecourse gallop and they think he's a lot better than this time last year, surprisingly considering his advancing years. What do you reckon of his chances this time around?
He's a similar type of horse to Smad Place, isn't he? And he's been around for a long time. He'll be taking on some young pretenders. But I think the point to make, it was true of Smad and it'll be true of Q-Card as well, that these are very much cup finals for these horses now. They're not going to be winning Gold Cups, so there's no point kind of saving them till March and bringing them along slowly. They need to try and win these races because they're at that stage of the season where if they can get them firing, get them fit straight away, they still offer really good pots. And, Q-Card winning on Saturday will bring the house down. And I'm sure Colin Tizard will have him 100%, fitter than a butcher's dog to run in this. And I'm sure he's going to run very well. The one that did catch my eye, if he's going to it, is definitely Red, who's put in some really good performances at Wetherby already. He won the Rowden Merrick there last season by quite some margin. A real big improver. I think he improved 17 pounds over fences last season. Well fancied for the National, which didn't quite work out. But I know Brian Edison has talked to him in terms of, having a go at the Gold Cup this season. So I think he rates him very highly. He's an 8-year-old now, so just be 9 in the new year. He's reaching his peak. He's already rated 159, which is the same as Bristol de May. And if he is still on the upgrade and he's got a few pounds still to go, then I think he could be the one who takes all the beating at the weekend.
Ah, very interesting. I mean, he was unlucky in the National, wasn't he? But maybe that was a bit of a blessing in disguise that he didn't have a really hard race. It's not scarred him or anything there, but it wasn't his fault by any means. That he wasn't managed to complete definitely red, and he jumps very well as well. So you've got that on your side, I presume. Jimmy, are you with Nick?
Well, I think both definitely Red and Black Lion would have chances, definitely. I think they finished 1-2 in a Grade 2 novice chase at Wetherby a few seasons back. So there's not much between them on form. But don't forget that they'll have the trainers for both those two will have the Grand National very much in mind. So,
Or the Gold Cup, as Watsy says.
Possibly the Gold Cup. I think Watsy might be being a little bit optimistic about that. But certainly the Grand National. I do think Watsy makes a really interesting point about Q-Card. I mean, usually he's quite rusty in this, and we don't see him at his best. But they'll be wanting to get him winning again. Obviously, the Betfair Chase will be the big target for him because he's just got such a good record at Haydock. But we might see him strip further here than we usually have in this race in the past, and it would be fantastic if he did win again. With so many doubts about the ground for horses like Coney Green, Bristol de Mai, and so on, it can sometimes go to an outsider. It did with Irish Cavalier last year. I mean, this is a real flyer, but I'm gonna maybe just suggest Shantou Flyer, who used to be with Rebecca Curtis, is now could be having his first start here for Richard Hobson. And people might be thinking, well, who's Richard Hobson? He's actually quite an upcoming trainer. I think he doubled his tally last season, a personal best season, 22% strike rate, over 46 points level stake profit. So he's an upcoming trainer. Shanty Flyer's a horse who goes well fresh and has always looked the type to do well over this sort of trip. Generally, he's been racing over a little bit shorter, over 2.5 miles. But I think he beat Village Vic first time up at Cheltenham last season. So he's got a bit of ability. If Q-Card was rusty and some of the big guns didn't turn up because of the ground and so on, I could see him maybe being quite interesting at a big price.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what price he was. I love that. Big bombshell to end on with Jimmy fancying Shantou Flyer in the Charlie Hall. There's your tip if you wanted one. Right, that should about do us for this week's Postcast. Don't forget to tune in on Friday's show. I know the tipping lads have been in excellent form recently, so you can't afford to miss that one. And remember, if you enjoy these Postcasts, please make sure you comment, rate and subscribe on iTunes. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again soon.